Through judging, we separate. Through understanding, we grow. Do Santa Meta.
Welcome to Finneytown Local School District's official podcast, the only place to listen to the in-depth stories from our students, staff, and community members. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the 4th season of the official podcast of the Finneytown Wildcats. I'm your host, Eric Muchmore. Mike Kennedy is back with me as the co-host. Mike, how are you this morning?
It's great. We have a big crowd today.
Big crowd. Great first episode on deck here. And if the podcast turns out to be anything like the conversation we just had before we started recording, it's going to be a good one, wouldn't you think?
I think so. So this is season 4. What's our theme here?
Our theme for season 4, it's spring. Here we are in the 4th quarter. New beginnings. People more likely to take some risks here at the end of the school year. So we felt it appropriate to title the 4th season, the theme of the 4th season, as taking a risk. So that's where we are. And our literacy leadership team is a perfect group of people to bring together to get that season rolling. Because what they've done, and we'll hear more about it here in a second, certainly fits that category or that theme. So.
Yeah, there's been a lot of buzz about it, so I'm excited to hear the story.
No doubt. Well, let's introduce our guests, huh? Actually, I'm going to ask that you all introduce yourselves. So we'll start over here with Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Woodward. I teach 3rd grade at Finneytown Elementary.
Thanks for being here today.
Hi, my name is Jen Bayless. I am the English as a second language teacher.
There we go, at Finneytown Elementary.
I am Meredith Baker. I'm the principal at Finneytown Elementary.
Meredith Baker, often referred to as MB.
I'm Jen Dinan, the assistant superintendent.
Thank you, Jen, for being here today.
You're welcome.
All right, well, we kick things off with rapid fire. And I'm going to pose a question and just right away let us know one or the other. So here's the first one. What would be more terrifying? What would be more terrifying? Opening the lid of your toilet and seeing a snake, or opening your refrigerator and seeing a rat?
Rat.
Snake.
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 Oh my gosh.
Immediate snake responses, but rat?
It's disgusting. In your fridge.
That snake could bite your rear end if you wouldn't have seen it and you sit down on the toilet.
You look before you sit.
That's already a practice of yours?
I have 3-year-old twins.
Oh, okay.
I know what's in there.
That makes sense.
Okay, well, I'm going to look at my toilet now. You guys got me worried. All right, so you're in a rush. You forgot to pack your lunch. You have to make a choice between these two places, Wendy's or McDonald's.
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 It's the Diet Coke.
Right.
It's not the food. It's the Diet Coke.
It's the
So it's the
Coke.
beverage that makes the choice, really.
I think they've done studies about that. That McDonald's has the best Coke.
Mhm.
Right?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yes.
It has a special formula.
It does.
Does it really, or do you think that's like a placebo effect?
No,
No,
that
I
is
think it's a different
absolutely
thing.
true.
Google
Additional
it.
carbon
I think-
monoxide. Or carbon
Yeah.
monoxide.
It's something about
That would kill us.
But we go out with a bang. It would be good.
It would taste good.
Oh, yeah, the McDonald's Diet Coke. I mean,
I didn't know that was
it's
a
like
thing.
McDonald's Diet Coke and then everything else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I know
It's not even
McDonald's
close.
fries are big. People like McDonald's fries, but I never thought of the Coke
It's the Coke.
or Diet Coke,
Diet
whatever.
Coke.
Yeah.
It's the Diet Coke.
Okay.
I would argue it's the Coke, too.
I just think it's the Coke.
It's the Coke. I don't do diet. It has aspartame.
Okay, the rat already got you. So.
Okay, next one and final one. Would you rather go out with friends or stay home and watch your favorite show?
Friends.
Friends.
I feel like you think that's what you should say, Jen.
I don't want to hurt my friends' feelings.
When they listen to it.
I don't know. That's really hard because I feel like it depends on the day or what has happened. I think, I want to be with my friends, but if it's been either a long day, no, I don't want to talk to anybody else. And I think I'd read a book, not watch a movie. But I know I just changed the question, but I'll go with friends.
Friends.
Yeah.
If it's friends, I'm just one or two. I don't want a big group. But more often, I'm probably going to be give me the book and stay at home.
Yeah, a book should have been an option.
What are you doing?
You know me. I'm staying home. Are you kidding me? I'm going to read a book or I'm going to watch something. I don't know. Probably
Reading
read
a book wasn't an option.
I
was
know,
given.
but you guys
I
changed
created
it,
it.
so I'm going with it.
There we go.
What would you do?
This is a tough question. My circumstances aren't so much about the number of friends or the hard day. It's like, who's at home with me? So it's like, okay. No, I'd probably, I rarely see my friends anymore, so I would take that opportunity when I get it. So,
And I would just like to say I was worried about hurting my friends' feelings, but I think you hurt your family's feelings.
I mean, they know. They would say the same about me. So, well, thanks for participating in Rapid Fire. That was a good one, Mike.
That was.
So this group, I think 2-3 years ago, may not have been sitting in a podcast room together. But here we are today because Jen, Lauren, and Meredith are key members of our literacy leadership team, which took off last year. And so, right, Mike, you mentioned earlier, there's a buzz around literacy leadership team, which we call LLT. We hear the successes that come out of it, the tough conversations that are had there, and it's been exciting to hear about as someone who's not a member. And so take us back to where this all started, because we didn't have a literacy leadership team prior to last year. So where does this story begin?
Do you want me to talk?
Well, I think the conversation's been going on for years.
Yeah.
Because literacy is not a risk, as the theme of the season is. It's something we have to really focus on and get up to par in the district. So I think it started with conversations years back. Lauren had conversations. A lot of people had conversations about literacy. And I think we got together and
I called you. So, yeah, I was actually out to coffee and breakfast with 2 other coworkers. And we were just like, we have to do something. And I guess that kind of fits the theme of taking a risk. And so I think I called Jen and I was like, hey, let's meet for dinner and kind of like make a presentation and ask if we can meet with people and if anybody else is interested so that we can like share our ideas and our passion for making sure that we're doing the right thing when it comes to teaching all of our kids how to read.
And then also the state has required us to change the way we teach. And so the science of reading is something really big. And that's a lot of what Lauren and I had been talking about. It was something that was kind of new and foreign to a lot of teachers. And so our leadership, our administration, put together this great team.
So great team, no doubt. The conversations where it started with dinner. What happened between the dinner and conversation and this great team?
I was like, that was very
Seemed
jumped
abbreviated.
over a part.
Well, fill in the blanks for us.
Why don't you tell us from your perspective what happened?
I think we had a meeting with you first. It was over at Brent. And you wanted to share. It was like, it's similar to what you just said. It was like, we have to do something. We need a curriculum. We heard about, teachers that didn't have materials and they were struggling. It was their first year. It was like, we need something. We had a meeting with you and I don't think it ended well. Like I remember we walked out and I remember thinking, I think Eric, you had said something and it was like, that was not how it was intended to be heard, or it was misheard or whatever it was. And I thought, well, this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you ask Jen for a meeting?
I did.
Or?
Well, so
Okay.
I was talking to Jen Bayless and I was like, hey, I've been emailing also, my master's degree is in the science of reading, which a lot of people in undergrad aren't even taught about. So it's kind of unfortunate that you have a lot of teachers who graduate and aren't prepared to teach kids how to read. And I think that's something I faced and something a lot of people face. And then, you start hearing about the science of reading, you're like, why aren't we learning about this? And a lot of the professors don't know about it. So Jen and I were just talking, and I think I emailed Jen Dinan, and I was like, hey, can we meet? There's a few of us, and I think she agreed to meet.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't specify how many people could meet or how many you were anticipating, but you said yes. So Jen Bayless and I kind of reached out and just put it out, and I hosted a Zoom a few nights before. Just
I don't think I knew
I
that.
haven't heard about
I knew
this.
that
No.
part. I knew that part.
just to explain our purpose, because originally we had called it a reading revolution, and some people were a little bit hesitant that it was called revolution. And
That feels more accurate, though.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Explaining the purpose, rallying the troops.
call it what you want.
Yeah.
So we met, and I just kind of explained like this. Really, we're just trying to express our desire to do right by kids and to educate our staff that works with our kids to make sure that everybody's needs are being met, because it's possible. And so we were really excited. Offered people the opportunity to meet in my room after school one day, and we didn't let anybody know how many people were in there. And, my room was pretty full.
Very.
Oh, there were over 30 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jen and I had a nice presentation, and yeah, and so from that, I told my husband, I was like, this might not go well, but we got to do it. So we did, and
Well, it's the right thing to do. So
It
I
is.
wasn't very worried. I think everybody realized that we have an urgent need. We have a lot of kids in our district who can't read, but it's not just our district. It's the way the nation looks.
it is.
Right.
And it's the way reading has been taught, and it's the resources we've had. So it's nobody's fault in this district. It's not our district issue. It's an issue, a national issue. And so I think that when you look at it that way and you take your personal self out of it, you realize that something that has to change. And it's not going to, as we've seen, it's not going to be easy. We have a lot of tough conversations. There's a lot of personal personality and personal ownership over how somebody teaches. And so, you can get really offended if you've been doing it one way for a long time and are told you have to do something different. So that's kind of where we are.
Let's dive into that part about movement, because you said movement. And I know you guys have been meeting for a while. I'm guessing for a year, right? Based on the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And so what kind of opportunities have you guys been able to create now that you're meeting? And how have you moved that ball forward now as a team to get where you want to go? Tell us that story.
Well, I think it took a lot of, in the beginning, it was just developing trust between one another. And we were essentially bringing together grade levels who hadn't worked together before, and administration, and that we hadn't really gotten to know. And so the first part was just like recognizing that we were all on the same page. We all had the same goal, and just making sure that like we keep that in the back of our minds. And so we started just kind of outlining our purpose and like what we wanted for our team. And through that, we discovered like professional development, educating teachers who don't know about the science of reading. That was really important as choosing a curriculum, because if you're given a curriculum and you don't know like the importance of it or how to do it, or like possibly changing the way that you teach, that's whatever curriculum you have isn't going to go well. So I think we took a lot of time with that. And then it's also been kind of eye-opening, like hearing other teachers' perspectives who are in different grade levels, and just sharing that with one another, like what it looks like in your classroom and what it looks like in mine, and like different pressures that you feel. I know I feel a lot of pressure as a third grade teacher, because like there isn't really much intervention, and it's kind of expected like once you leave third grade you know how to read. But I think nationwide we're seeing that that's not happening, and so that kind of weighs heavy on you. So just sharing that, I feel like.
Yeah, and then keeping the focus on our goal is to get, all of our kids to read. And so if that's the focus, personal feelings and all of that kind of sometimes have to be put to the side, and you have to kind of be willing to take some risks and do things differently. Because as much as it's about teachers, I think it's really about our students. And so you can't really argue the fact that we have to change. Numbers don't lie.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because, for me, I hear the word science of reading, and that seems like a big, like, I think about getting into a lab and putting this together, and I'm sure there's meaning behind it, but what is the exact meaning behind science of reading for our audience?
it's really the science of how you learn to read. So it
How
has
the
a lot
brain
to do with,
learns to
it has a lot to do with neuroscience. And at the cusp of the whole thing, they always talk about Scarborough's reading rope. And that is a rope that was designed or developed, a diagram, to show how all of the facets of reading come together and how there's a reading comprehension or a reading foundational skills section, then a language comprehension section, and how all of those have to fit together to get to a fluent reader. And so as teachers, you have to make sure you're addressing every part of that rope, and that's what the science of reading kind of explains.
I would add it's like a systematic, explicit approach.
Exactly.
And it's what has been proven by science, like, to be effective.
That's amazing. I mean, being a reader myself, it's not like I remember as a kid how to read, right? But I have seen it through my kids, teaching them how to read. It really has a process to it. And I think the coolest thing about your story is you're doing this. Like, you're figuring out a way to have a conversation. So how many people are normally meeting at these meetings? Like, what is it typically? Who's coming? Because I know it's not just
I think we have 10 to 12.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a representative for every grade level, K through 3, intervention specialist, our Title I representative. Jen represents our EL,
Psychologist.
school psychologist. Yeah. We intentionally focused K3 first. Like, we recognize it's a
okay.
district-wide
Yeah.
issue, but K3 is the foundation. If we can figure that out, then everything else will grow from that. We want to make sure anything we do for 12 aligns and supports with what we're doing K3.
So where does the group stand now? Like, at what stage are you at?
Oh, definitely the messy middle.
Messy.
Yeah.
We're trying to pick curriculum. And, you know, that's not as easy as I think maybe it once was, because before I feel like you could look at curriculum and talk to sales representatives and be like, wowed, and say, this is going to be great. Look at all these stories. Look at all these resources. And now we're really scrutinizing what we have. And there's no perfect curriculum. And we realize that it's just a lot more than that. And we've really got to do a lot of professional development because, you know, Meredith will say all the time, it doesn't matter what we pick. We're putting books in hands. And I said, it's the hands. Like, it's where those books are going. And so we have to make sure that we kind of develop our whole picture of literacy and so it makes picking a curriculum really hard. We're struggling.
We are. But I think it goes back to what Lauren said, like, talking about risk. Jen and I remember when we were planning in the spring, I think we took a huge risk to not immediately go pick a curriculum because I know that that's what the team wanted. It was like, we need a curriculum. Let's start with a new curriculum this school year. And so my first thought is like, well, we're opening a school building. We cannot start a new curriculum, right? We saw that with Bridges when we, during COVID, right? It didn't work well. But I think there was some risk involved in saying, okay, we need to find our purpose. We need to develop that trust within this team. But that, I think, is so helpful right now because we're able to have those more difficult conversations, to what Jen Bayless was saying. Like, they're really tough conversations because you said it before, teaching is personal. People really, especially teaching reading. I mean, it's a hot topic. And so if we're asking teachers to start shifting what they're doing, we have to invest in the people. Like, we can have the books. Jen's right. I say it all the time. It doesn't matter what we pick. We have to focus on the adults that are implementing it. But I think it starts with that trust that we have with our team. But yeah, it's the messy middle right now.
I appreciate you sharing the challenge that you're currently facing. And the messy middle is a real thing, and it's tough to sit there and not rush to the first, shiny solution. So I appreciate hearing that. Also, during those tough times, I think, is when we learn the most, or at least for me, I learn the most about myself when in the messy middle, so to speak. So I'm curious, on this journey, in what way have things shifted for you? Or maybe a better question is, what have you learned about yourself through the process of being on this literacy leadership team, by calling it, by being members, by designing and facilitating the gatherings, what have you learned about yourselves?
I mean, I've learned that that if I have something I believe in and I'm passionate about it, I can't give up, because I have wanted to give up. And I am not going to, because the kids in this district deserve me to keep pushing forward. I've also learned that I have to give people grace, and my voice does not always have to be the loudest in the room.
Mine is.
Always. Lauren's always the loudest. So I've just learned to listen. That's been a big thing, and listen and think and reflect before I respond.
Thanks, Jen.
I agree with that. I think I'm trying to improve. But it's really, really hard when you're passionate about something and I don't know, I go back to like science has proven that this is what our students need. And at the end of the day, like you do have to set like your personality aside or whatever and focus like on the end goal. But I think it's also understanding that that's everybody's end goal. There's nobody on the team. Like I don't think there's a teacher even in the building who doesn't want what's best for kids and doesn't want them to learn how to read. So I think I don't know, I think I've gotten to know other people from other grades a lot better and like hear their perspective and like, you know, what it looks like in their room. And I think we've had a lot of good conversations about that. And I think we've also kind of seen what doesn't work or what we don't want. So while we are having a hard time picking what we do want, like we've definitely eliminated, I feel like that was a lot of work, like looking at, I think we probably looked at 10 maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just like figuring out, okay, well, you know, just because the review says this, like once you're really looking at it, you're like, no, this is not what we want. So I don't know.
I appreciate that, Lauren. How about you too?
Oh, I've learned a lot. I mean, about the science of reading, I know the least still, but so that's been interesting. When I go back to the coup in Lauren's classroom, which was just a little over a year ago, and it's funny, they're leaving out the part of the story. Eric was there, Laurie was there, Patty Darcy no longer.
I was there.
And so when it was, okay, obviously we need to create a team and meet, who's in? Like they all scoot back. Meredith and I are left looking at each other and we're like, okay, yeah, we can do it. And so, and walking out of the conversation in your classroom, I'm using conversation loosely.
Thank you.
It was a fantastic presentation, and it was clear there's passion and care for our kids. That we never doubted. But if you would have told me a year from now how much I would enjoy, like it's one of my favorite gatherings, excuse me, one of my favorite teams, how often we laugh. I mean, I genuinely like Lauren and Jen and everybody on the team. I don't think Meredith and I would have believed that if you would have told us that a year ago. And we felt you guys were probably feeling the same way about us.
I think that, I think the lesson, it's been a lesson in facilitation because we walked away from that. We were like, fine, we'll plan a meeting. Like, that's okay. And we'll pick a curriculum. And that goes back to that trust piece, right? Like Jen and I had to do that too because, right, we had this coup and it was okay. But it's been a lesson in figuring out like the ebb and flow of the meetings of like, okay, we value finding a purpose of this team. Like we could say it's finding a curriculum, but there's a lot more to it. And I think we recognize that early, but we also need to be responsive to the group that we're facilitating. And so figuring out like, okay, there's some tension in the room right now. Like we need to push forward or we need to pull back. We need to reestablish. A couple weeks ago, we had a rumble, or maybe it was probably more than a couple weeks ago, but there was tension with the curriculum process. And I remember when we were planning it was like, are we really doing this? Like, is this happening? And even as it was getting ready to start, I'm like, okay, here it goes. But I think for me, the lesson in the learning is facilitation. And it's been fantastic to work with Jen with and do all that. Plus, it's just a lot more time with Jen to plan. So that's been fun.
We do have fun. Well, and our team does a fantastic job, I think, going back to their colleagues. Like I was
going to add that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just those voices. They really are trying to represent everybody. in the building.
Well, I think that's something cool, not something that we appreciate, like, being in Finneytown, is, like, a lot of districts wouldn't do this. They'd just be like, okay, we hear you, and then pick a curriculum on their own. And we never wanted anybody in our building to feel like we were just, like, pushing a curriculum on them without considering their needs. And so we've really tried as a team to, like, take it back to our team members and be like, hey, like, this is what we're talking about. Like, what do you guys think about this? Like, even before we were looking at curriculum, like, just talking about our needs and our wants and trying to make sure that everybody's voice is heard so that when we do, like, plan professional developments for them, or when we do finally pick a curriculum, that it's, like, I mean, you know, we know you can't please everybody, but that it's just, like, voices are heard and taken into consideration.
And I think the other side of this coin is that the state is requiring all of this literacy action. And so, you know, part of me was like, oh, the state's going to have us do it anyway. Let's just wait for them. But I think it's so much better this way because we have actually had a year to work together and hear each other. And I just think we've built a really good foundation for our grade levels to move forward. Whereas if the state just came in and said, listen, you've got a choice, here's some curriculums that meet the needs, pick one and go. You also have to start teaching this way. Here's your PD, pick it and go. I think that as a district, it would have been a little, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Chaos. Like, it would have been a little bit of chaos. All my dog hairs flying around because I'm covered in it. But so I think this has been a nice way for us to kind of prepare to get our district ready for what the shift that has to happen. So, and you guys have done a great job facilitating. Had we not had the rumble, I think we could have fallen apart like a week later. I think
That feels good to hear.
I think people were ready to, like, just say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore.
That's good.
So that was necessary and good and very productive and hard. It was hard, but it was good.
Well,
Well,
go ahead.
You go.
Rocket,
Take it
paper,
away,
scissors.
124.
I just think there definitely has been a shift because, like, as you were talking, I was thinking about, like, going back to when I tried to lead an open space circle about the science of reading, and, like, one person came in, it was a parent, and I was like, awesome. And then we did, like, we had, this was during COVID, we had, like, book studies that you could, like, join or host, and I hosted one about equity and literacy, and a bunch of people joined, and, like, from that, I just think about, like, Karen Bowsey came to it and, like, was totally not on board with the science of reading, like, was almost offended by, like, what I was saying. And then, like, you encouraged me the next year. I was like, another open space. Like, I'm not doing it. And you're like, we have to do it. We have to do it. And so together we did one about the science of reading. And there were probably, like,
There were a lot of people.
30 people there. And, like, Karen just shared. And I was like, oh, my gosh, like, you spent the summer learning. And so, like, then thinking, like, Megan Geist knows a ton about the science of reading. Like, I don't know. It's just, like, a lot of people are learning about it, and so that makes it that much more impactful when you have other people to, like, share that knowledge and, like, that drive to do the right thing. And then you guys, I think, like Jen said, you do a really good job of facilitating and making sure that we, like, stay on focus and on task as much as possible, you know, and just make sure that our purpose is, like, very clear.
Yeah, we are intentionally the literacy leadership team, not a curriculum adoption team. Like, our team will continue to meet even once we do figure out which curriculum, so that it's constantly, so literacy and what it looks like in our district is constantly a conversation.
And that's what I've heard is just you've built a structure for sustainability and just continuous learning together. And the story that you've shared is filled with risks. I forgot about the open space that you hosted with the one parent who attended. Like, hosting that was a risk, but then to host it again after that speaks to your passion and dedication to it. That's another risk. Organizing the group of teachers to meet with admin, I'd say that was a risk. Facilitating, recognizing that a rumble was needed. And for those who don't know, rumble is a structure for a difficult conversation. From Brene Brown's Dare to Lead, and to take the risk of facilitating a rumble. I've participated in those. Those are tough.
Yeah,
but,
it was not fun.
Not fun, but right. But everybody did it and is better for it. And so oftentimes we avoid the difficult conversation because it is uncomfortable. And the fact that enough trust was established, a purpose was established, and everyone's passionate about it just made the rumble far more likely to be successful. So the amount of risk from the story that I've heard is incredible, and the relationships that I feel here as you two share inside jokes and laugh and reflect is cool. And obviously there's an energy. I can't tell you how many times, it's possibly every single time LLT meets, my phone rings at about 5:30, 5:45, and it's Dinan, and she's going, "You will not believe what happened in this meeting."
Oh my God.
And I'm like, "No way." And she's like, yes, and is so excited about it. You know, and I work with Jen very closely, and I can honestly say there are very few meetings, if any, that match the energy I hear from her afterward. And so I think this is becoming somewhat of a model for other groups, content areas, people who are passionate about a topic to possibly follow in the future. So thanks for sharing the story.
Well, our kids are lucky, huh?
No doubt.
I hope a lot of parents hear this because, man, we're doing some cool stuff, and that feels good. So, well, close us out, Mr. Muchmore.
All right. Let's imagine it's 3 years from now. Do a little time traveling here. It's 3 years from now, and everything you hoped would be happening as a result of LLT's work together is. What's that look like? What's happening? And how does it make you feel?
I'd say you could walk into any room and put a book in front of a child and they could read it to you on grade level. That would be awesome. I think our teachers would also be smiling and they would be more relaxed and less stressed. And I think our parents would be completely thrilled with the education their kids are getting.
And how would you feel?
I would feel on top of the world.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jen.
I feel like Jen said it perfectly. Do you want us all to?
I was going to say there'd be a lot of like co-planning and teaching together. You know, that like new teachers who might not know much about the science of reading would feel open and feel equipped. They would have the materials that they need. They would know that their teammates have the training to support them, and that, you know, it's not like you're on your own. It's like we're a team. We're all in this, like, for the common goal of teaching our kids how to read. Like Jen said, like, many more kids would be reading on grade level. The interventionists would be using the same curriculum and tools that we are. You would see a lot of vertical alignment, more vertical planning together, because I think that has been very impactful, like seeing the perspective of like K1 as a third grade teacher. So I think that, you know, there'd be a lot of shared planning together, continuous professional development. We've talked about like supporting each other and making sure once we do pick a curriculum that it doesn't fall by the wayside because we're offering continuous PD in areas that people need. And I think the collaboration between admin and the teachers would still be there, so that, you know, when there is a need, it's met. And like you said, we're just feeling on top of the world because it's like you don't have the stress about wondering if your kids are going to know how to read. Like, you're assured that they're going to.
I like the sound of that. Thanks, Lauren.
What both of you said, I think the other piece that we have talked a lot about in LOT is that we would be watching each other and working with each other, like observing teachers, because I think we learn best from each other. Like, we know that within this district, we learn from each other. And so I think we would see, like, Lauren would be in another classroom observing a lesson, giving feedback, and then receiving feedback. I think there's a lot of power in that, and that we would be able to have the systems and structures that would allow those things to happen. Yeah, and I'm with you on top of the world. It feels good to watch kids read. I used to teach first grade, and so like this is, I'm passionate about it as well. So seeing kids read would be fantastic.
Yeah, that was my first, seeing kids read, and that gives me goosebumps because we know then they're set up for success. I thought the collaboration, absolutely, but the thing the team has talked about is what MB just said, where people are asking, hey, Lauren, will you come into my room? Or Jen, can you come watch this? Or will you co-teach this with me? I'm struggling. So no one feels alone, because we know it'll be bumpy. Anything is bumpy. We're not expecting what we choose will be this quick magical fix. So what I hope is that there's constant conversation, that people aren't just in their rooms alone getting frustrated and then shoving the resource aside and going back to what they used to do because that's comfortable. And instead they feel confident, comfortable enough, safe enough to say, okay, somebody, I need help. It's not working. And then we'll figure it out together. Because we talk about that in LLT too. Like, we have everything we need in that space. Like, we do have outside experts we brought in. But honestly, you two and Megan and Karen know as much as they do. So we can figure it out.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
Well, Mike, episode 1 in the books.
And the books. It's a
You know,
good way
it's-
to start it.
Absolutely. And this On Top of the World thought, I think of a kid who's struggling through reading and finally, gets it or it clicks or they get to the end of a short story or a book and they feel on top of the world. And the work you're doing as a team is certainly going to push us forward so that every kid experiences that feeling of being on top of the world with their ability to read. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
For me, I'll say this before we let everybody go. My kids' friends group, like, it's amazing how many of them don't read, right? It's like one of those arts that are kind of dying. So for me personally, because I love to read and I love hearing my son tell us stories about what he's reading in the car, my kids. And so hearing you guys do that work, like, I know that's a gift that our kids here at Finneytown will have, is there's so many books that all of us have had that impact us. And now the opportunity that they're going to have to be able to have those same books impact them in different ways is so amazing. The power of reading is huge.
Yeah.
So thank you for all the work.
Lauren Woodward, Jen Bayless, Meredith Baker, Jen Dinan, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Before you go tackle the world at Finneytown Elementary, Mike Kennedy, it's good to be back.
It is good to be back.
Here we go. Season 4, Taking a Risk, here at Finneytown Local School District. The podcast is underway, and we'll be back for a second episode soon. We'll catch you then. And check us out on YouTube now that we have a video podcast. And stay tuned. We have a lot of good stories to tell. More to come. Thanks.
Finneytown is a place that truly thrives. We look beyond our students' differences and allow this to introduce new perspectives and experiences to our lives. It's a place where we value student voice and presence. Our teachers, staff, and parents work together to create an inclusive school culture where all students can feel safe to learn and gain the knowledge they need to excel throughout life. It's a place where we are better together. We grow, we live, we thrive. We are Finneytown. Let's go Wildcats.